Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks. On Wednesday, the 31st day of January, year of our Lord 2018, welcome to the John Moore Show. Our purpose tip of the day is considerably more important than pretty much any I've ever given. One of our listeners, a scientist in the United Kingdom, she has written a article, what we're calling a dissertation, on the disappearance of insects. She's an entomologist. I've got this article on the right side of my home page. Scroll down just to the right of the banner promoting the event I'll be speaking at in Dallas, Texas, this coming March. The title of the article is Dissertation on the Disappearance of Insects. You may not think about it, but if you do think about it, you'll come to realize, as have I, that the world we live in cannot exist without insects. It simply can't. They're a vital part of our world, and the bugs are going away. Extremely important article. You need to read it. You need to understand it and make appropriate preparations to deal with what's coming at us. It will change our world dramatically. And while I'm thinking about it, yes, I will be speaking at the Hear the Watchman event in Dallas, Texas, which begins March 22nd, goes through March 25th. If you go to my website at thelibertyman.com, you'll see the banner there. If you use a promotional code that's given, you get $20 off the conference rate and 20% off the live stream if you can't go in person. So it's going to be a fun event, once-in-a-lifetime gathering. Let's look at some of the people that are going to be there. There's some folks I know and a lot of folks I don't know, people I've been wanting to meet myself. John B. Wells, I've had John on my show. Lisa Haven, I'm a big fan of Lisa, haven't met her yet. Paul Begley, I think I've had Paul on my show. A lot of very well-known people that you're going to have a lot of fun meeting them and hearing what they've got to say. I will be the keynote speaker, by the way, at this event. I'm really excited about it, and I got a little clock counting down here, 49 days, 9 hours. So they've got where you can click on getting tickets, the speaker's schedule, group rate hotel booking, sign up to be baptized, hotel information, become a sponsor, visit us on Vimeo, and they have an Israel tour they're doing also. So check that out. It looks like we have patient waiting in the green room. My friend Professor James McCanney. Professor McCanney is a credentialed astrophysicist. He has taught astrophysics at the university level at Cornell University. He's taught mathematics at Cornell University. He's a radio talk show host, author, and amateur archaeologist. Good morning, Jim.
Morning, John. How are we doing?
Good. You sound like you might have a frog in your throat, sir.
No, I'm just getting going here. I haven't slept yet today, so.
Oh.
Just,
well, okay, well, we appreciate you being with us and taking away precious time for sleeping, which is not optional. I was mentioning yesterday was the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Tet Offensive, how I went 3 days with no sleep, which will certainly change your brain in very strange ways. Yeah, so sleep deprivation is a marvelous thing to behold. Well, Jim, the big news, of course, is the FISA memorandum, which is supposed to be released, I believe, this week. Today, tomorrow, Friday, I'm not sure which, but I believe before the end of the business day Friday it will be released. And the mainstream media, the liberals, the Democrats are just in a tizzy over this, aren't they, sir?
Well, I haven't seen myself, but I heard that Alex Jones actually got a copy of it and had released it, although I hadn't seen it myself. But I heard that, so I can't confirm that.
Okay, well, I'll just click on Jones' website here, and if he has that, that would be the main featured story, I would think. And I'm not seeing.
Yeah. it was I clicked on it was clicking through YouTube, and it was Pete Santilli was talking about it, and he was actually reading. It was like a 92-page document.
Right.
And then there was also a 4-page summary, and that was what. But anyway, it looks like it was a clear-cut case of hiring and pure deception to get the FISA warrant to spy, and then they just went hog wild with it.
Okay.
Thinking that Hillary would be elected and there would be no repercussions.
Right. I've got Alex Jones' website here, and it's not anywhere I can see on his homepage. So that would obviously be the headline on Alex Jones if he had that particular document. But regardless of Alex Jones, it probably will be released before the end of the business day Friday, which means very soon. And I have great hopes for the implications of releasing this, and I have great hopes also at this point, if that is released, that the Department of Justice will move forward to investigate the Clinton Foundation and the uranium sale and all of these things that smell and stink to high heaven. These things really need to move forward, don't they, Jim?
Well, yeah, and then there's the McCabe issue and the Mueller issue, because all this happened when Mueller was in the FBI, right? Right.
There's a lot of things are connected to each other, and you're right. All these things hopefully will be exposed and investigated properly by impartial investigators, and then the indictments issued. That's what really needs to happen. Jim, I don't know if you were kind of in and out there right at the beginning of the show, but my prepper tip of the day, and I'll go ahead and forward this to you by email. One of our listeners to my show is an entomologist scientist in the United Kingdom, and I sent her an inquiry asking her opinion about the disappearance of flying insects here in North America. And while I was hoping to get a response, I had no idea I would get the lengthy response that I did. And it's posted on my website, and apparently it's happening all over, at least the northern hemisphere, which of course is where most of the people and most of the food is grown. So, as I said for the prepper tip of the day, the world we know, the world as we know it, cannot exist without insects, can it, Jim?
No, and I was going to mention, because I've been traveling, let's just put it that way, recently and over the last number of years to a number of places where there are insects, bees, and the full range of, creepy crawlies. And so there are places that have been untouched. Some places that either due to economics, where they just don't have enough money to buy Roundup or glyphosate or other products like that, but other places where it's been outlawed.
Right. And well, it needs to be. It needs to be.
And there are definitely bugs in normal quantities in certain places. So it's a very definitely a United States deal for sure, and then some other places.
Well, a scientist was saying that in the United Kingdom, she's seeing this exact same thing, is the disappearance of all insects, not just flying insects. I know here, I mentioned on the air the other day, Jim, there were two events I went to this past summer, outdoor events with involved food laid out on about 12, 14 feet of tables, all open to the air, of fruits, vegetables, desserts, and meats, and maybe 2 or 3 flies flying around at both events on warm summer days. That's so bizarre, off the charts crazy for around here in south central Missouri anyway. And then riding my motorcycle on warm weather and getting very few bugs on the windshield. And the same thing with automobiles. Even places like Florida in the summertime at night, driving 70 miles an hour, almost no bugs on the windshield. That's off the charts crazy, Jim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, but like I say, it's definitely a United States deal, and then other so-called first world countries. And but I can assure you that there are places where there's plenty of bugs.
Well, that's reassuring on one hand. On the other, I'm not sure that the bugs need to recover and reestablish themselves. I just forwarded the article to you, Jim, so it's in your email box when you get a chance to look at it. Okay. Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I'm no scientist. Don't pretend to be. I do know, as we said earlier, that the world we know, the world we live in, cannot exist without bugs. I'm not sure what it would take to reestablish the insect population, but reestablishing it is not optional, is it?
Well, Monsanto, if you remember, has created insects that go along with glyphosate and other of their products. And so that's one of the bizarre things, too, is they think they can recreate nature. And that's, like one of the great fallacies that somehow, this interwoven biological system can somehow be duplicated, or with a couple substitute species, if you even want to call them species. But that's just crazy, because of all of the millions and millions of interdependencies that are there. Bees cannot, they don't recognize pollen with, Monsanto plants. And so they're confused, because they literally recognize pollen through chemical associations on their little feet, etc. So to think that they're somehow going to modify naturally occurring plants that have basically developed in this ecosystem, and somehow with one or two other species, then everything is going to be fine. I mean, this is just insanity. In fact, I would classify it as criminal.
Well, I can't disagree with you, Jim. I agree with you. It should be classified as criminal.
But anyway, I'll take a look at that maybe later. Recently, I've kind of had to isolate myself because I've been so busy, and the wing generator has been released within certain closed circles. I've been real careful about how exactly it gets released and other things. It's unfortunately I can't say all of the places that it's been to and all the different things. I'm going to try and put some video footage on my webpage of actual wing systems that are out and moving about and working. But it's just incredible. But one thing I'll say is that people who have experience with alternative energy and things like that, the one thing that they all say is that it doesn't make any noise, and it doesn't. It's just quiet. It doesn't make any kind of noise at all. And
really?
So that it's interesting to hear people's comments, because if you've been around 3-blade wind generators, they're horribly noisy. They're electrically noisy, which you can't hear, but your body can feel it. And one guy was saying that if you have like a home wind generator that maybe goes up to, maybe some of them are 5 kilowatts or something like that, he said it'll drive you crazy. And if you were foolish enough to attach it to your house or roof, now you just made your house into this high vibration speaker, basically, that'll just absolutely drive you crazy. So the one comment I get from experienced people is that it doesn't make any noise, and it doesn't. It doesn't even make a whisper.
Really?
And I was around one of the installations the other day, and it was really interesting. There were some birds flying by, and one of them came up behind one of the wing generators and fluttered, did like a helicopter stall, looking at it, and then flew around it.
Right.
And so the birds are checking it out, but they can see it, and they don't get. It's not going to kill birds or bats. One of the big problems with 3-blade wind generators. But no, they're out and working, and like I say, I've had to release it within limits because, as with anything, there's opportunists out there that would, what can you say about opportunists? That's what they are. And I encourage people. I've been contacting some of the customers, but the offer is still open. If people go to my webpage, I have an email address there. People can email and just write the word wing in the subject line, give me a little description of your location, and then we get back to and kind of put them in order of the best locations, and then start dealing with those people for actually installations.
It's funny you mentioned noise, Jim. Those multi-blade windmills that I still see them in use out west to pump water. They have about 20 blades on them. Man, those things make a racket.
Yeah.
Whack, 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 whack.
Yeah. And those are, they're interesting in that you can see those things that are maybe, who knows, 100 years old. They're still out there.
Oh, yeah, easily. And if they've been maintained, they still, go ahead.
They're terribly inefficient. They're really not a good design, but they work, and they do what
they're intended to do. They do pump water. Here's our break. Call numbers 800-313-9443. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman. Okay, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 31st of January, visiting with Professor James McCanney. His website is linked to my links page at thelibertyman.com. Jim, we've got 2 radio shows a week. Tell people how they can listen live in the archives, if you would, please, sir.
Yes, John. Every Thursday evening, 6 p.m. Central Time, from WWCR Shortwave, Nashville, Tennessee, my weekly commercial-free show, the James McCanney Science Hour at the Crossroads. And then the paid cast is the weekly, an extra hour of a deep dive into science topics. And that's $3.95 a month. people sign up for a subscription. And so, at any rate, all of that information on my webpage. The weekly commercial-free show airs many different times, re-airs, I should say. And so all of the information, how to listen, where to listen, etc., is all on the webpage. Just scroll down a little. People have a hard time finding it because I have so much stuff on the webpage. Just scroll down. When the page splits into 3 columns, it's right in the middle column, how to listen.
Okay. We got our first caller on hold. We got Diane in Arizona. Good morning, Diane.
Good morning. Interesting that your tip of the day, because I'd waited for a few days so I could call in today with regards to the lack of insects. In Mesa, Arizona, since before summer, we've had no flies, no mosquitoes, no fruit flies where I'm at. And I have the doors open and cat food out and food on the counters, and there is none of that. In the spring, I saw 1 butterfly and 1 moth.
Yeah, and what about other insects, such as spiders and so forth?
Okay. We had spiders, and a year ago they did fine on the flies, and we cleaned the spiders up in Thanksgiving for a friend that doesn't like spiders, and they have not come back. And usually they would come back like within a week.
Right, right.
The only thing that we have is cockroaches, and they're dissipating too. And I do organic everything. I don't spray anywhere. And this is a retirement community. Most everybody has rock gardens, except for me, and there's just not much spraying going on. But there is a whole lot of chemtrails. We used to have only clear skies, and now there's a lot of overcast skies.
Right, right. Well, it's hard to know the cause. That's difficult to determine, but we are learning the effect, aren't we, Diane?
We most certainly are.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the update. Yeah. If anything changes, get back with us. Let us know if anything changes.
I do have another question, if you don't mind.
Please, go ahead, Diane. Yes.
For Professor McKinney, you had talked about Ice Age last Wednesday.
I'm sorry, about what?
Ice Age, with the changes of the sun, and possibly putting like a canopy over.
Yeah, right. I had mentioned that there is clear evidence that the Earth is in a cooling era, and primarily because the sun does not have enough, or it has less of a incoming supply of hydrogen and deuterium, because the fusion of the sun is at the surface, not in the core, and so it depends on ongoing influx of those materials to burn. And so, when I was working with some Russian scientists in the mid-90s, Alexei Dmitriev wrote a paper, and he said they were detecting the change, and it was kind of like we were heading into a space in our motion through the galaxy that had less material in it. And it looks like that's actually coming true. So anyway, but then I commented on building doming over cities, things like that. And I also talked about how the wing generator, I've been approached by actually a couple foreign countries to convert wind into heat. And that's something that is actually a product in the product line of the wing, is to generate heat, because if you have, say, a house, when the wind is blowing, it like depletes the structure, whatever structure, of heat faster. So it makes sense that if you have wind and you have more wind, then you're generating electricity and heat so that you can offset that extra loss.
Right.
Did that answer your question there, Diane?
Actually, what I was kind of curious also on is because you had mentioned that the
Diane, hold on through the break. Diane, hold on through the break. We got a break we have to get to. We'll be right back. Everybody stay tuned.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
More here on Wednesday, the 31st of January. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. We've got our first new image of North America with new coastlines posted as of yesterday. It's from the hugely popular TV show from the 1950s, Sea Hunt, starring Lloyd Bridges. It's posted right there at my website. Beautiful map. The image, it looks like a TV newscaster reporting the news, and the image of the map takes up the entire wall behind him. It is the Navy map. If you find one, get that screenshot to me, and as a thank you, you get your choice in my 5 DVDs. So it's a fun project moving forward into the new year. Of course, also we have energy cleaners for sale. This is my home business. When you place your order, I'm the guy that packs up the energy cleaner. I'm the guy that packs up the factory-made fitted mattress pads. Ladies, do this. Just go ahead and get one. Get the mattress pad for your queen-size bed, your king-size bed. Get everything together. Put the batteries in it. Don't tell your husband, and you'll be delighted when you find out how his libido is improved with the energy cleaner. And it will be a lot of fun. Might be just a thing for Valentine's Day, by the way. So energy cleaner, only $285, shipping included. Mattress pads vary in price by size, of course. You can get them right at my website at thelibertyman.com, or you can call my toll-free order line. Keep in mind, use PayPal. PayPal is the most secure way to make any payment online. The toll-free order line is 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Professor James McCanney. His website is linked at my links page at thelibertyman.com. And Diane from Arizona has a follow-up question. Let's go ahead, Diane.
Professor McCanney, you had mentioned that you had been tracking the weather and the temperature has been in decline. For this area in Arizona, I have noticed that it's been staying warmer and not getting to the freezing. It's only had, last 2 years, it only had one day of a soft freeze, and this year my cats did not shed. I've had them for 14 years, and they always shed in the fall for the winter. This year they did not shed. So another anomaly. But my question is in regards to the weather temperatures that you've seen around the world.
Now, you're saying in Arizona where you are, it's warmer?
Correct. Not a year ago with a Master Gardener program, and we had plants, fall plants going to seed because it's staying warm so long, and the seeds got as higher than they have ever gotten before.
Well, I mean, I should say this. My casual, let's say, armchair analysis is not all-encompassing, certainly. And I've talked about this. When people talk about global warming, I said that temperature is not the only issue here, but it's also the heat content in the air. If you have less moisture in the air, which is a result of cooling, there's not enough heat to vaporize the water off of the oceans. Then in a place like Arizona where it's drier, it'll heat up faster, but the nights will be colder. Now, have you noticed anything like that?
Yes, actually, that it's not been as hot. The nights have not stayed as hot during the summer as they used to.
But you see why if there's not as much water content, then the especially in a dry area like Arizona, then the days will heat up quicker. The actual temperature will be higher, but there's not as much heat content in the air, which is interesting. But then at night, it'll cool down faster because there's not as much moisture in the air. And like I say, the reason for less moisture is because of cooling. And so, anyway, but there again, it's to do a really thorough study. You don't use temperature actually as a monitor. As a parameter, you use heat content, which is much more difficult to measure.
That's interesting.
So anyway, yeah, it's like I say, it's kind of a hip pocket or armchair quarterbacking of the weather. But just looking at the severe winters, it appears that it's a lot colder. And also in the tropics, having spent some time in the tropics, but there again, that's not what I'd call a thorough study.
Well, I appreciate your insight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for the call, Dan. We appreciate it. The call number is 800-313-9443. Jim, one of the things I want to be doing is printing out a copy from the French Climate Accord agreement, where they give a free pass to more than 1 billion people in China and more than 1 billion people in India to make all the CO2 they want. That just absolutely deflates the argument about carbon dioxide being dangerous and that we need to decrease our own here in the Western world, Jim.
Well, the reality is we need a lot more carbon dioxide, and this idea that if you increase it just a little bit, that somehow we'll have a runaway greenhouse effect is ludicrous. It's just not even true.
We can't. You're absolutely right, Jim. But it's the two concepts can't occupy the same space. You can't. On one hand, you can't say it's so dangerous we're going to destroy the world and we need to cut back here in the West, while at the same time saying, you 2 billion people plus in China and India can make all you want. The two concepts can't occupy the same space, Jim.
No, and that's the full contradiction of that, and that's why Trump just blew it off. And all it ever was a way to tax especially the United States, and transfer large volumes of money through corporations and agencies where a lot of people would make a lot of money. That's all it was about. And of course,
and causing harm.
Yeah, that's like Obamacare. Obamacare was not about health care. It was about putting an unbelievable tax on the American public that it could never pay off.
Exactly. We got our next caller on hold here. We got Scott in Arizona. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. I got a couple, 3 observations. As far as, I'm 50 miles south of Interstate 40 and 50 miles from New Mexico at 6,400 feet. Right now, the days, we're on a warming trend. Days are in the 60, but nights are in the 20s. So it's almost 40-degree swing, where normally it'd be 25 to 30.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
where's that now? Where did you say that was?
60 degrees in the day and
where?
20s at night.
Jim's asking your location, Scott.
Solo, Arizona. 50 miles south of Interstate 40, 50 miles from New Mexico. By the White Mountain Apache Reservation.
Okay.
Oh, no, we're at 6,000 feet. We're on the Mogollon. So,
yes,
you're
up on the plateau there.
Correct. Where ponderosa pines go into cedar trees. I saw a bee yesterday, but last year there were no honeybees, but there was a gray bee and lots of wasps. And then I was out, I do forestry work, and Ranger Pete was there, and we were looking at the lichens, and he was commenting that we're relatively pollution-free because these lichens are growing. And we're a long ways from agriculture. There's a few thousand acres in Snowflake where they grow corn, but other than that, it's hundreds of miles. So anyway, and then I just got back from India, approximately 17 degrees north, 78 degrees east, and we're in the rice fields, and they were commenting that they didn't have mosquitoes, but they have this huge reservoirs, rivers, and rice paddies. How can there not be bugs? That's what I don't get. They must be tremendous insecticides or something. It just seems odd there would be flying insects around there. And that's, it's subtropical or tropical, so it should be year-round bugs.
Well, I live my sleeping quarters in Vietnam was literally 10 feet from a rice paddy, literally. And I assure you, gentlemen, we had no shortage of mosquitoes.
Yeah. And here I am in the rice belt of India, and there's no mosquitoes.
Well, it's obviously not just a Western phenomenon, then, is it?
Well, no, the same corporations are in India that are here.
Right.
And they have these huge agricultural chemical plants. We're driving through town, and there's bags of chemicals spilled on the street. It's just...
Well, one thing about rice is Monsanto has very successfully taken over the rice industry worldwide, where they have literally forced by brutal force in some cases, to prevent rice farmers from using any seed but Monsanto. And I've seen this in a number of third world countries where they just come in and beat heads, literally, anybody who doesn't comply. And they get the local police to do it. They get the local goons
chemicals from Monsanto.
Yeah. In the rice production.
Yes. Right. So this is a global war against whoever the corporations.
Right.
Well, that's my observations for the day. We still have some flying bugs around us, but the night temperature swing is increasing.
Mm-hmm. Like I say, that'd require a really thorough study but not just temperature, but heat content, because it's and that goes for the ocean, et cetera. It's really a complicated study, and that's what they never did with global warming. They never studied the heat content. They only, took the lazy method of sticking a thermometer out the window and only talked about temperature. As literally, temperature has nothing to do with global heating. They're two contradictory, or they're not contradictory, but they're totally different parameters. Heat content and temperature, are loosely, very distant third cousins.
Well, this brings up a point that we only had frost on the windshield a couple times this year, so the humidity is below 10% most of the time right now. So there's not even frost, which is kind of odd.
Well, it's interesting because if there was global heating, it's a self-correcting process. What happens is you get more evaporation. The water in the air blocks more of the sunlight from coming in, so it's a self-correcting process, but cooling is not self-correcting. If you have cooling, then you have less water in the atmosphere, and the heating, even though you might have, like the woman was saying, warmer days, it doesn't stay because you don't have the water content in the air to hold the heat. So cooling is not self-correcting. Heating is.
Okay, well, thank you.
Scott, we appreciate the input. Thank you, sir. Call number is 800-313-9443. Jim, I'm not sure you're aware of it, but Monsanto is being bought by Bayer, the German pharmaceutical company. The sale is supposed to be complete in the next month or two or three, sometime soon. And I don't know what that means for the rest of us, but that is in fact taking place.
Mm-hmm. There's an ad that's going around. I made a comment last week on my show about it's done by the Motley Fools. It's called Motley Fool, and that was started by the guy who started Whole Foods. His name is I forget. I have my notes here from last week. I'll grab that. But the ad says that Stephen Hawking's allegedly made some kind of prediction that will be the most important event in the history of civilization. And it's a bunch of crap. First of all, Stephen Hawking can't make any predictions, but this guy sold out Whole Foods, which started out as a healthy venture, sold it out to Monsanto, and it turned out to be one of the most corrupt advertising campaigns in the history of the world. And this guy now is the head of something called Motley Fool, and they're promoting this ad that somehow there's this amazing world-changing, civilization-changing event that's going to happen, and you should invest in it. So anyway, I just want to warn people, if you see that popping up on your computer screen, that's what it's all about.
Okay.
Some kind
the gentleman who started Whole Foods, his name is John Mackey. He's the CEO of Whole Foods. John Mackey, right?
Yep.
So, okay. Well, we got our last break coming up pretty soon. What direction you want to go next, Jim?
Just wanted to comment on the blue moon, which is going on right now. There's an eclipse of the moon, and it's total if you're on the West Coast. But I heard some kids that were looking, and they said they couldn't see the blue part. But the moon does not turn blue. The term blue moon means we had 2 full moons in the same month. That's all it means. And so you've heard the expression, something as rare as a blue moon, or once in a blue moon, which is a rare event, an expression. So a blue moon is literally 2 full moons in the same month, and typically there's not an eclipse associated with them. So, and then also the moon is called blood moon, and that's because of the way the light bends through the Earth's atmosphere as it hits the moon. It causes the moon to look a little reddish.
Exactly. Here's our break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. January, Professor James McCanney, whose website is linked on my links page at thelibertyman.com. Jim, we've got about 3 minutes here to get out the information you want to get out, sir.
John, the Great Barrier Reef of Australia is dying, and it started just after Fukushima. But the world scientific community keeps talking about global warming, that somehow this is a result of global warming, which is absurd. because the ocean has a tremendous buffer against any type of climate change or anything like that to happen so quickly. But it's very clear to me that it's a result of Fukushima, and nobody wants to talk about that. So anyway, that's another man-made disaster, and it's ongoing. It's happening very quickly, and the Great Barrier Reef is one of the great ecological systems of the planet Earth. So losing something like that is a major loss, just like losing insects, is basically killing the Earth. So that's why I'm working. That's why I haven't been sleeping. I've been really working on the release of the wing, like I say, within closed circles, so that this thing can get out there. And it really works. It is working beyond my expectations. And this, when people see it, that's the other comment they make, is that this is the future. And here's two comments that came in. One that said it's like going from the propeller age in aircraft to the jet age. That's one comment. And then one student, a high school student, made the comment that if propellers were meant for flying, then why don't birds have propellers? So some good observations there. Okay.
Well, outstanding. Got about a minute left here, Jim. Any idea what topic you might be talking about in your show tomorrow night?
No, I haven't really sat down and looked at this. What I've been trying to discuss is the wing generator, and telling people if they know somebody that has a farm, ranch, a situation like that, that would be a good candidate for the wing generator for power, to send them to my webpage so they can email me and get on the list. So once again, that information at the top of my webpage, how to get a hold of the kind of a selection process to become to get in line for a wing generator for power. And by the way, it's not only electric power. It can be various other types of power, direct power, say for compressors or other type of mechanical, replacing three-phase motors, basically.
Well, pumping water comes to mind.
Yep.
As one good use.
Yes.
And so lots of potential there. Jim, thank you, sir. Look forward to having you back next week. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Okay, it's top of the hour break. We'll be back. Stay tuned. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here, our second hour on Wednesday, the 31st of January. Proper tip of the day. I cannot emphasize how important this is. I've been talking to different people about this, and the conclusion I've reached is that this topic is this concern, this danger, is just as great as at least a limited nuclear war. It is that important. It is that dangerous. The purpose tip of the day is to read the paper at my website at thelibertyman.com. If you scroll down the right side, right next to the banner, just a little bit to the right and above the banner on the Dallas event, dissertation on the disappearance of insects. The insects are going away. If you listen to the first hour, we got first-hand reports of no mosquitoes near rice paddies in India. A couple of reports from Arizona of the lack of bugs. This article is written by one of our listeners, a scientist, an entomologist. An entomologist is a scientist who studies insects. An entomologist living in England, in the United Kingdom, giving her a report on what she knows about the lack of insects in the United Kingdom, which runs very parallel and point by point to what we're seeing here in North America and the United States also. So read the article. It's 13 pages. It's a quick read. well written. I edited it to clear up some of the English subtleties that go between here in North America and England. As Winston Churchill once said, the United States and England are two great countries separated by a common language. So check out the article and read it. It's incredibly important that you do so. That's your prepper tip of the day. We were hoping that Jeff Nyquist would call in. He has not called in yet. And I don't have his phone number right here at my fingertips. It's about 20 feet away from where I'm sitting. So I can't get that to my engineer to give it to him. Maybe we can scroll back to some of our notes from last week where I gave it to him and get Jeff on the line that way. But Jeff Nyquist is, I regard Jeff a friend. I've had him on my show beginning probably 10 or more years ago. Last week was the first time I'd had him back on in quite a while. That's my oversight. It's easy to get distracted in this business. But our intention is to have Jeff Nyquist on a weekly basis. And I just talked to Jeff yesterday, and we agreed that he would be on. Okay, my engineer is calling Jeff, and he's not picking up. He may have an unexpected conflict here. So we'll go back to talking about the prepper tip of the day. The prepper tip of the day. So I'm going to click on this article here. I start out when you click on it. There's my inquiry to the scientist, and I gave her my personal observations, what I saw, going back to Labor Day weekend 2010. That particular weekend, I had an assignment, and I was driving from Boston to St. Louis. We began the journey early evening, just before dusk in Boston. It was getting late evening. The sun was about to go down. But it was not late. It was early evening, maybe around 6 p.m. And the goal was to make the drive straight through. So about 10 p.m., we're going through New York State on the interstate highway, 70 miles an hour. About 10 p.m., we stopped to get fuel. Now, this is a warm summer evening, Labor Day weekend. And so we're getting fuel, and I'm looking at the windshield. And I count maybe 8 or 10 bugs on the windshield. I thought, man, this is strange. I look up at the bright white lights at the service station, and there's so few bugs flying around that I can count them. Very, very few bugs. Next example I give is 4 years ago, I'm in Florida, driving from the south to the north at night on the interstate, 70 miles an hour. Once again, 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I stop for fuel, and I look at my windshield, and I'm expecting, we're in Florida, good grief, in the summertime, Florida in the summertime. Once again, maybe 7, 8, 10 bugs on the windshield, hardly any at all. I look up at the bright white lights, and there's just simply no bugs there. Maybe 8 or 10 that I can count flying around. I go on and talk about a conversation I had with a friend about all this. My friend is well connected, as we sometimes say, to FEMA and people in the military. And she confirmed what I said. In fact, she expanded on it. She says, John, within 100 miles of the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Gulf of Mexico, there's almost no flying bugs in this country, almost none, which certainly was more confirmation than I expected to get, way more. She went on to say that the Midwest is still a place where there are a lot of bugs, but and from personal observation here, I've seen a dramatic decrease as well. As most of you know, my regular listeners, I like riding my motorcycle, and I do have a motorcycle equipped with a windshield, and I'm riding this motorcycle in warm summer months, daytime, early evening, get very few bugs on the front. There's some, but not nearly what you would expect. So, scrolling on down to this scientist article, she goes into her observations in the UK when it comes to insects. Not just flying insects, but all the different types. In fact, she goes at the end of her article here, she goes into the different type of insects, and if I mispronounce these, I apologize, because this is not my expertise. The first she mentions mollusks. No legs, soft bodies. These would be snails, slugs, clams, squids, and octopods. And next she mentions annelids. No legs, bodies are divided into rings like many little segments, which would include most worms. And then insects. Insects have 6 legs, small and often winged, with body formed of a head, thorax, and abdomen. Then arachnids. I think I'm saying this right. Arachnids. 8 legs, spiders, scorpions, mites, ticks. And then she goes on to mention crustaceans and myriapods. I hope I'm saying them legs. Lots of legs. Crabs, lobsters, crayfish, shrimp, krill, woodlice, and barnacles. Okay. She also mentions that insects are easy to breed and a healthy option for a diet. Here in Europe, you can order insects online for human consumption. It's worth looking into for that for rural survival. It's also worth looking into natural options to get rid of unwanted plants instead of chemicals. Friends of us have several free-range and organic farms, and from pollinators to leopard slugs, they have established a bit of their own ecosystem and use nothing chemical. No chemicals. It's not a flippant statement. It's not a matter of making a outrageous or hysterical statement to say that the world we live in, the world we occupy, as we know it, cannot exist without insects. It can't. It can't. That's how serious this is. And this is happening worldwide. We know India is obviously on the other side of the planet, North America, UK. It's happening worldwide. And as Professor McKinney said, there are some remote places where it's not happening, which is good. If there's any chance of recovering, we will be recovering by taking insects that are thriving in some places and moving them to some place where they're lacking insects. So there's a lot of questions here, a lot of unknowns. Will we be able to do that? Will we be able to do it in time to save the ecology that we depend on as human beings to live and thrive and be healthy on this planet? Being next to a rice paddy in a tropical climate or semi-tropical climate with no mosquitoes, that's off the charts crazy. There's one of my favorite films. It has a segment in the film dealing with mosquitoes. It's a Vietnam War film, one of the earlier ones. Go Tell the Spartans. Go Tell the Spartans. It concerns the early part of the war, and it's well done. There's parts of it that are funny, parts of it that are tragic. It's based on the 1967 novel. Burt Lancaster is a star, and Burt Lancaster does an excellent job, it's worth watching. I haven't watched it for quite a while, but it's certainly worth watching. The film came out in 1978, only 3 years after the war ended. The time frame is 1964, the early part of the buildup in Vietnam. But there's a scene in there where the Army has designated testing of the mosquito infestation to determine, I'm not sure what they were trying to determine, but it was the Army, and they had a reason for doing it, I'm sure. It was pretty funny, but it reminded me of dealing with mosquitoes when I would be on guard duty, how I would roll down the sleeves of my uniform, button up the neck as high as I could, flip the collar up, and then use this disgusting, nasty Army bug repellent to spray around my hands, my neck, and my face, in a attempt, shall we say, to keep the mosquitoes at bay while I was on guard duty at night. That's when the mosquitoes came out, was at night, by the way. Very little trouble with mosquitoes in the daytime. Early evening, the sun starts to go down. That's when the mosquitoes would come out by the tens of millions. And of course, we all had mosquito nets to sleep under. I recall when I got home from Vietnam, the first morning I woke up, I reached out and I didn't feel a mosquito net. I thought, something's wrong. Where's my mosquito net? My mosquito net's not there. And it took me about 10 seconds to realize, oh, I'm not in Vietnam anymore. I don't have a mosquito net. I don't need a mosquito net. I've got 4 walls, windows, and air conditioning. The windows we had in Vietnam in the building I lived in there were windows but no glass, simply iron bars to keep the criminals out, no glass and no screens. So the insects could come and go at their leisure. So what do? The bugs are going away. What do? Well, we go back to my ongoing advice to become part of a hobby farm. Your hobby farm can and should become a haven for the insects. Seriously, a haven for the insects. It's well known to gardeners that earthworms in your garden is a good thing. It's a sign of healthy soil that's getting healthier. The presence of earthworms, that's a good thing. Now, there are insects that are harmful to gardens, and there's ways to keep them away that cause no harm to the ecology. Different things like mixing up a cayenne pepper mixed with water, for example, and spraying it. There's other ways. There's different plants, or some ornamental plants that the different bugs don't want to be around, so they steer clear of your garden. So you can have it both ways. You can have your organic garden and still keep away the bugs you don't want there, and allow even those bugs, the bugs we regard as pests and bothersome, there's still a place for them in the ecology. It's all critical. None of these things are optional. We need to have all the bugs all the time, as much as we may not like them, as much as they may be bothersome and harmful and destructive to some of the things we're doing with fruits and vegetables, for example, or horseflies on the horses or whatever it might be. They're still part of the ecology, and and they are not optional. So the thought, the concept of having a hobby farm is just as strong as ever, just as important as ever. And having hobby farms all around the country that have become havens for bugs is a good thing. I hope it would be effective. I don't know that for a fact. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an entomologist. But it would stand to reason that if you had favorable conditions for the different bugs, that they would gravitate towards those favorable conditions and would be able to survive and multiply and thrive. That would be my hope anyway, that that's what would happen. Okay, we got our first break coming up for soon. The call number is 800-313-9443. This Dallas event's going to be a lot of fun in March. I hope a lot of you can make it. We're going to have we do have a poster, a banner up there on my website. You click on that, you can register. Don't forget to put the promotional code in there, MORE20. That's right there on the banner, $20 off the conference rate. If you can't go, you get 20% off the live stream. It's quite a gathering. It's going to be quite an event. Here's our break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at the J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 31st of January. We've got a caller in hold here. We'll get to our guest very quickly here, but we'll get this caller first. Steve in Texas. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, John. Hey, there's a lot of problems with the wild hogs out here, of course. But there's a big problem with the wild hogs. They're saying about 80% of them now are infested with what's called the bobcat tapeworm. And it's a big problem if you get the bobcat tapeworm. It's a big problem. You're going to get real sick.
Right.
And so everyone heads up. I understand it's regional. It's gone into Louisiana, up in the areas of Arkansas. I'm quite sure you got them up over there in Missouri. And
we got lots of wild hogs. I'm not sure about that tapeworm, but we got lots of wild hogs in my neighborhood. Right.
Yeah, it's a big problem, though. They're finding about 90% of the wild hog are infested with them out here. And so a lot of people are stopped hunting them, unfortunately, for eating. They're hunting them for sport still, but they've been told, hey, it's probably a good idea for a while not to go ahead and eat them. If you do, be very, very careful when you're butchering them. Keep an eye out for the tapeworm. They're really easy to spot, by the way. If you skin the hog, they turn out to be kind of a purplish blue kind of line inside the meat, and it's easy to see. So be real careful out there, okay?
Right. Well, before you get away there, Steve, you guys in Texas know how to have fun. Now, I know this for a fact because there was a display at the NRA convention. I saw a company in Texas that they use helicopters and machine guns, and you can participate in this. All you need to do is lay your money down, and you also can hunt wild hogs from a helicopter with machine guns. Now, that's my idea of having fun.
They have a helicopter, a pilot out here that does that downtown, and there are a lot of the farmers that send a lot of the hunters out on that same helicopter, and they go out there and put them up in the air, and we see them fly off all the time. So they're real heavy in this area, but I just wanted to have that heads up that if you are going to be hunting in any regional area for wild hog, when you butcher it, be real careful. Take a close look at it before you decide to eat it. That's all. However, there's another thing I'd like to talk about is the lack of birds. There's a lack of the Carolina chickadees, and they don't migrate. There's also a lack of sparrows. They don't migrate. There's also a lack of the blue jays. They don't migrate. And the crackles, the little ugly blackbirds, they're disappearing too.
Right.
And yes, we are having a problem with a lack of bugs. However, there's one bug that still remains out here that's very bad through July, August, and early September, and it's called the love bug. And it's a little black little fly that flies around. And, man, they get all over everywhere. And I couldn't go anywhere on my motorcycle during the summer because of it. And what it is they introduce these particular flies, and they're from South America, to infiltrate into the fire ant beds. And what they do is they lay a larva into the head of one of the fire ants. The fire ants take, they're still alive with the larva in their head or in their back, down into the nest. And what happens is the larva matures, kills off the fire ant, and inside the larva pops out and eats up all the fire ants and the fire ant larva. And that's working pretty good, but these little black flies that fly around.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It's just horrible. It's just horrible. Anyhow, that's all I want to talk about.
Appreciate the call. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Well, better late than never, and we have patiently waiting in the green room my friend Jeff Nyquist. And Jeff, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late. No, I overslept.
Well, it's still early there in California, so that certainly can happen. Well, Jeff, I read your latest article at your website. Give us your website, please.
J.R. Nyquist, that's JRNYQUIST.com, and that's how you can read the content there. And of course, I've written about the situation with the President Trump and the grand strategic struggle with communism.
Well, you have, and we've known each other for 10 or 12 years, Jeff, and one of the talents that you bring to the table is connecting the dots, the dots that seemingly have no relationship to one another. And you're very talented at doing that, sir, and that's one of the things that you've done in this article, haven't you?
Yes. A lot of people don't realize that communism always has repeatedly, since the revolution in the Soviet Union in Russia in 1917, 100 years ago, they have repeatedly faked going away. Stalin got rid of the Comintern supposedly in 1943. Back in 1921, Lenin claimed that they didn't know how to make a communist economy, so they were retreating into capitalism.
Exactly. Hold that thought, Jeff. We got a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. Sarah Moore here on Wednesday, the 31st of January. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. Our project, it truly is our project, of finding new images of North America with new coastlines on TV shows and movies, now has the first image of 2018 posted. It's from the hugely popular TV show from the 1950s, Sea Hunt, starring Lloyd Bridges. It is the Navy map. Very nice, sharp image. Some of these images are pretty iffy, but this is a nice, sharp, clear one of the map of North America with new coastlines. If you find one yourself in a movie or a TV show, get that screen capture to me, and then you get your choice of any of my 5 DVDs as a thank you. Keep in mind, if you have issues with joint pain, arthritis pain, back pain, well, get yourself an energy cleaner. I use mine every night. I wake up pain-free in the morning with plenty of energy after a great night's sleep, and you can also. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? It's not going to fix itself. Only $285, shipping included to American zip codes. The mattress pads that go with it, they vary in price by size. We got the twin, full, queen, king, California king, and of course the handy travel size as well. Everything's right there at my website where you can read up on the patent application information, the great testimonies from people that we know, like Steve Whitman. Keep in mind, I take PayPal, the most secure way to make any payment online, MasterCard, Visa. Got a check or a money order, just drop it in the mail. My address is at my website at thelibertyman.com. My toll-free order line, 24 hours a day, here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Jeff Nyquist, his website is jrnyquist.com, which is linked to my links page. Jeff, we got our first caller on hold here. We got Rick in Missouri. Good morning, Rick.
Just going to make a comment about insects. Do you want to save that until tomorrow?
Yeah, why don't we do that, Rick?
Yeah. Not a problem. Not a problem.
We got a great conversation going here about something.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I was behind. All right, thanks. Bye.
That's okay. That's okay. Let's go back to where we left off there, Jeff, before the break.
Speaking of insects, right? No, just kidding.
That's okay.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about communism. People think it has gone away because this is, people don't know this. The Communist Party USA once faked its own demise, its own dissolving. This has been repeated as a maneuver, and they know how to go underground, and they know how to operate front organizations, and they know how to infiltrate and take over political parties, groups, movements, whether it's the environmental movement, the Democratic Party, or even in some cases, some local Republican Party organizations. And it's the Russians, the Chinese, the Cubans, the North Koreans, the Vietnamese communists, and the homegrown all-American communists. They're real, they do exist, and if you don't think they do, you've got a surprise in store.
Well, I've over the decades, I've known a number of homegrown American communists. The typical profile, and of course this is not 100%, Caucasian, sons and daughters of upper middle class, successful people in their chosen careers that are somehow, some way, ashamed of their heritage, ashamed of the success their family has enjoyed, and go this direction. I think it's a form of mental illness, quite frankly, myself. That's a conclusion I reached many, many years ago, that embracing communism because you think it's a good thing and a proper thing is, in fact, a form of mental illness. What do you think, sir?
Yes. There are a lot of people who go for extremist ideas, particularly communism. There are people who feel envy and resentment. There are often people who are maladjusted. Sometimes they're spoiled as children. Sometimes that's what's going on. Sometimes they have narcissism, severe narcissism can be an issue. When you look at Karl Marx's biography, for example, he suffered, obviously he was narcissistic. You have people like Stalin or Mao Zedong, the communist leaders of China and Russia. They were not merely narcissistic, they were psychopaths who did not apparently have, they had attenuated affect and no conscience about what they were doing, and killed tens of millions of people.
That's right. I once knew a woman, she was a graduate of an Ivy League university, very attractive young woman, who wanted to ingratiate herself with the poor people of the Soulard neighborhood, which is a lower middle class, at least it was 40 years ago, mostly Caucasian, poor neighborhood with a very high drug use and crime and so forth. And what she did to ingratiate herself was to completely adapt the norms of the people she wanted to ingratiate herself with, including not only her manner of dress, but also her personal hygiene. She even stopped the normal personal hygiene you would see of a middle-class American and adopted the personal hygiene of a person who was basically semi-illiterate and poor. It was very disturbing to see that transition, but I did observe that firsthand. So getting back to the main premise, however, we are living day by day the consequences of what started a century ago, aren't we, sir?
Yes, we are. We have a communism problem, and we don't know it because the communists no longer advertise that they are communists. They call themselves Democrats, social democrats, socialists, progressives, and they want to say that they represent the mainstream. They're in the media, they're in the government, they're in Hollywood, they're in major corporations, they're in education, they're all over education. Not only the universities, but also down to the grade school level. When I trained, this is how I got into this. I got a teaching credential 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago now, and both of my master teachers were Marxists. They wanted me to train up in Marxism. They told me to study Karl Marx if I wanted a future in education. And I basically rebelled against that, and I had to leave the teaching profession in California because they had taken it over to such an extent that I wasn't welcomed, that I developed a reputation as being anti-communist. And I realized that in the era of Ronald Reagan, the communists were taking over education in Ronald Reagan's home state, California, and nobody was doing anything. There was no investigation. There was no public concern, and besides, everyone thought we were winning the Cold War or that we had defeated the communists.
Well, Jeff, here's what happened nationwide. The communists focused on the following when it came to education: infiltrating and taking over the schools that teach the teachers. That's where their focus was for decades and still is. And if you focus on taking over the schools that teach the teachers, you, within a generation, basically take over the whole system, don't you, sir?
You've got exactly. And that's what I ran into. And, of course, I became very interested, seeing that this was real. And I educated myself. I studied. I tried to figure out everything and understand it from the point of view of being directly involved with people who were doing it and observing them. And this led me to write my first book, The Origins of the Fourth World War, and this 30-plus year experience of trying to understand it inside and out and following the progress of it in Russia and the United States, around the world, and seeing all the mistakes that we were making and the obliviousness, the lack of awareness of Americans, and the way we are propagandized, the way that we have been misled and deceived in this country, and I forgot to mention, they're in the churches. They're in the churches too. They're taking over, and they can sound like Ronald Reagan. A communist can sound like Ronald Reagan. They can. Many of them are trained to do that, so they can get into Republican organizations, and they can get into the Heritage Foundation would be one place. Wouldn't they want to get into there? Well, yeah, they would. If I went to the Heritage Foundation and I told them what I'm telling you, they would laugh at me. Now, how is that? Well, what I'm saying is true. So how do our leading institutions, conservative institutions and Christian institutions, how do we have Patrick Buchanan saying that Vladimir Putin is a Christian and a nationalist and a patriot and a conservative person? That is completely false. Patrick Buchanan, the great conservative, has been fooled. Now the useful idiots aren't just on the left, they're also on the right. And, my task has been to try to alert people. One day everybody's going to say, that Nyquist guy was right, but I don't want them to say it when it's too late.
Well, I know Pat Buchanan. I was in charge of his security detail for a day when he was visiting St. Louis, and he lived in St. Louis for many, many years, of course. I found during the Obama administration, I found many times myself agreeing with things that Vladimir Putin was saying, which seemed to be at such a odds ends with what Hussein Obama was saying. Now I can't tell what's in Vladimir Putin's heart, but many of his public statements that he was making during the Hussein Obama administration sound like things that I really wanted to hear.
And that was intentional on the part of the Russians, because they wanted to do a military buildup while Obama was getting rid of our military, and they wanted to do it so that the usual people that would be alarmed by a Russian buildup would not be alarmed, so that people like Patrick Buchanan and yourself or myself would go, well, Putin's a good conservative. I don't care if he has a big military. In reality, to give you just one example, I think I said this on the show last week. Last October, there was a giant meeting in Sochi, Russia, of the Communist Youth Organization, of the biggest communist youth organization in the world. They had 30,000 communist youth there, and the keynote speaker was Vladimir Putin, and he said, I am behind you. You are idealistic, great young people. Go for it. Literally is what he said. Go for it. And that's not the speech that a Christian makes to a gathering of 30,000 hardcore communists. You don't say go for it if you're a Christian. Communism is atheism. Communism is against freedom. Communism has killed more people in the last 100 years than just about any war or plague or anything that's ever hit humanity.
Oh, I agree with that, absolutely. We got a caller on hold here. We got Mark in Oregon. Good morning, Mark.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yes. I was wanting to ask your guest if he would agree that communism came from Judaism, and I'll listen off air.
Okay, Mark. We'll address that matter. Did you hear the question, Jeff?
Yes, I did hear the question. No, it didn't. Actually, Plato was one of the first writers to write in a communist vein. There is, there's this problem that happens. There was the head of Napoleon's secret police name was Joseph Fouché, and he conducted a deception operation. He made up false documents and false bribed witnesses to report to a historian, a Jesuit clergyman, that the French Revolution was a conspiracy of Jews and Freemasons, or Masons. And this abbé that wrote this book about it, he was fooled initially, and the book went out. But the problem was he realized people came back and told him, look, we were bribed by the secret police in France, Joseph Fouché was Napoleon's minister of police, and it was part of an intrigue. Well, it never quite, even though the Abbé denounced his own book as he was deceived by the French secret police, it became a set piece on the reactionary right that the Jews were behind all the revolutionary movements of the 19th century, and it wasn't true. You had then the Tsar's, one of the Tsar's police generals, secret police generals in Paris, was an admirer of Fouché, and he invented a document called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was demonstrated in 1920 to have been a forgery, cribbed partly from a book called The Conversations Between Machiavelli and Montesquieu in Hell. And even though in the English language, among educated people, it was known that this was a forgery, in Germany, for example, and some other countries, that never really got understood, so that someone like Hitler emerged in Germany, and Hitler used anti-Semitism as a special weapon. What he did is he had to unify Germany, and Germany was divided between the right and the left. And so he could claim the Jews were the enemy of Germany, and he could go before businessmen and conservatives and say it's Jewish Bolshevism. And then he would go before left-wing groups, and he'd say, no, it's Jewish capitalism is the enemy. And then whenever he talked about the Jews, right, the right would say, oh, they're talking about the Bolsheviks. Whenever when the left would hear him talk against the Jews, they go, oh, he's against the capitalist bankers, you see. And so that was Hitler's trick. In fact, there's some evidence that Hitler didn't actually believe what he was saying about the Jews. When the day he shot himself, he told his valet that it was just a metaphor, that the Jews weren't even erased, which is really mind-blowing. But no, communism doesn't come from the Jews. No, it doesn't.
Okay. Well, that's something that gets repeated and carried out a lot in various places. Well, let's move on from there. And we have our last break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 31st of January, visiting with Jeff Nyquist. His website is jrnyquist.com. Got about 3 minutes here, Jeff.
Yeah, well, it is certainly like your commercial there. We're in a battle for the truth, and people need to be engaged. We have a president who's being accused of being in collusion with the Russians. The people who are accusing him are in collusion with the Russians. That's one of the things I encourage people to look at. And when you're looking at investigations, the improper use of the FBI and the CIA, what do you think the first agencies in this country, the Russians and the communists, want to control? The FBI and the CIA.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, under Hussein Obama, we had a Muslim in charge of the CIA. How much, anybody who converts anything as an adult is a real, true believer. It doesn't matter what it is. So you're absolutely right.
Well, of course, Mr. Clapper also had admitted to voting for Gus Hall for president in 1980. So, Gus Hall was the Communist Party USA candidate. So not only was he a Muslim, but he was a Muslim who voted for communists for president and was still accepted into the CIA even when he told them on a lie detector test that he voted communist. So think of what must have been wrong with the CIA back in the 1980s.
Well, it's a lot more recent than that. I had a conversation with an FBI agent a few years back, and he said that their mission statement no longer includes keeping track of communist activities or communist, either one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's why communism, every communist leader in the world does not say they are communist anymore. And that would include people like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. They do not admit what their real ideology was. When Barack Obama was in college, he was a communist. He was a Marxist-Leninist, according to his own classmates' testimony. Now, did he ever denounce communism? Did he ever admit publicly that he had been a communist? No, he just became quiet about it.
Right.
And
in addition, Bill Clinton spent 3 months during when he was a young man in Moscow. I believe it was around 1970, 72, something like that. There's never been a public explanation for the 3 months he spent in Moscow as a young man, ever.
He not only went to Moscow, he went to Prague. He went to Prague, Czechoslovakia, and there's some information about that hasn't come out yet. But yeah, he was not an innocent. He was up to no good when he went behind the Iron Curtain.
Well, that's where the deal was made. I basically promised him all the money, all the cocaine, all the women he wanted for the rest of his life if he'd be their guy. I believe that's the deal that was made.
Yeah. Well, he was a committed Marxist in those days, yeah?
Absolutely. Jeff, we're out of time. Set your alarm next week, sir.
Oh, yeah, okay. I will.
Okay. Thank you. We'll be back next week. Okay, that's it for the day. Get medical supplies, energy, cleaning, essential oils now while you can, your firearms, ammunition. Never ever do it for guns. Have a fun, safe, productive day. And God bless America.